There. Such a confirmation. I love it. So before we launch into the miscellaneous remarks by Carl Little, I want to welcome him to our group. Carl is a friend of the MDI Historical Society for many years and a member for many years. He's written for Chabaco, specifically about Marguerite Yourcenar, and also he has published poems and has done a Chabaco chat on Petit Plaisance as well. And I could go on and on about our great relationship with Carl in years past. And also MDI has a good relationship with him, having learned a lot with your great output in art history and with you and your brother's books that are published on numerous different artists, Maine and national. So I'm really happy that you're here to share your knowledge with us about Madame Yourcenar today. And so I would like to start just by asking you, and you might be prepping your miscellaneous remarks with this question, with this information, but I'd just like to know how you learned about her and how you started to read about her, how she entered your life, and then from there, let the miscellaneous remarks begin.
Okay, well, the answer to that question is in my remarks. So I will just jump in and you will have your answer promptly. But let me start by thanking you, Jenna, and the MDI Historical Society for inviting me to say a few words about Marguerite Yourcenar. The invitation provided the opportunity to go down some really fun rabbit holes related to Yourcenar, whose presence in the world of global culture remains incredibly intact and vibrant all these years after her death in 1987. And I will offer a few examples of those global cultural appearances in the remarks that follow. But to answer your question, I thought I would share an account of how I came to read the book Memoirs of Hadrian. When I moved to MDI in 1989, I began to immerse myself in literature of the area. At one point, I even had a contract to edit an anthology of writings from Greater MDI. Alas, the project turned out to be too big for this small Bar Harbor publisher. One of my first sources of island literature was the Soamesville Library. With two small children at the time, I spent a good bit of time there and ended up helping librarian Pat Pugh with various activities, including organizing readings and writing the newsletter. This is Alison Rector's painting of the library, which appears in Art of Acadia. That's the springtime when they put out the boardwalk, so people don't walk through the mud. In my immersion in island literature, I soon discovered Marguerite Yourcenar. Not only did this legendary writer once live in Northeast Harbor, she was buried more or less in my backyard. My mother's house on Oak Hill Road backed on Brookside Cemetery, which became one of my family's regular haunts, including a place where my children could ride their bikes. These are the gravestones of Madame Yourcenar, her partner and translator Grace Frick in the upper right, and below that of her close friend Jerry Wilson, all buried in Brookside. I came to find out that Yourcenar and Frick had first rented a small cabin near Brookside Cemetery. This was before they bought the house in Northeast Harbor. And in speaking to various people on the island about her, I gained a broader sense of her character and in some cases eccentricity. Kathy Sprague, who worked at the Soamesville post office, told me that Madame, as she called Yourcenar, used to send oats at Christmas time to the horses that she and Grace had ridden. If memory serves, Kathy said that Yourcenar addressed the packages to the horses themselves. This is a photo of Frick and Yourcenar riding in the early 1990s. Sorry, 1960s. You can find an account of Yourcenar's life in many places in the web and elsewhere. I recommend Josiane Savigno's consummate biography, Marguerite Yourcenar, Inventing a Life. I think I got out of sequence here. Yeah, right there. Which came out in 1993 from the University of Chicago Press. It's a biography rich in detail, including a wonderful account of how Yourcenar rediscovered her early passion for Hadrian. Go back to that last one. And here's, I just thought I'd offer a quick bio of the writer. Yourcenar was born Marguerite Kleinwerk de Crayencourt in Brussels, Belgium in 1903, and adopted the anagram Yourcenar as a pseudonym for her first novel, Alexis, in 1929, when she was 26. After a few years of bohemian life, she met Grace Frick, then professor of British literature in New York, who became her companion. In 1939, Frick invited her to the United States to escape the outbreak of World War II. They lived in Hartford, Connecticut, and then in a house they called Petite Plaisance until Frick's death of breast cancer in 1979. According to Maria Louise Asher, writing in the New Criterion in 1993, Frick, quote, managed the details of their shared life, aided with research and proofreading and translation. The pair traveled often because they, quote, this I take some exception to, because they, quote, found the gray Maine winters unutterably boring. Oh, well. The last part of Yourcenar's life was divided between writing in the isolation of Petite Plaisance and long journeys abroad. She traveled around the world with the young American film director, Jerry Wilson, seen here, 2 photos that I found on the web, her last secretary and companion with whom she had a tormented relationship. Wilson died of AIDS in 1986, and Yourcenar died the next year. It was Wilson who made the short film L'Île Heureuse, Happy Island, in 1984, which records Yourcenar visiting places on and around Mount Desert Island. I strongly recommend that film. I think I got it out of the Northeast Harbor Library a while back, but it's quite good, and it shows her at Birdsacre, and she visits the grave site of Hortense Flexner on Sutton's Island, and it's kind of wonderful. I'm delighted that you all are reading Memoirs of Hadrian, Yourcenar's masterpiece, and the work that helped gain her a place on the upper reaches of the 20th century literary pantheon. Indeed, in 2002, Memoirs of Hadrian was included in the list of the World Library's 100 best books of all time, composed by 100 writers from 54 countries. Yourcenar is one of just 11 women authors on the list. In her account of its conception, Yourcenar notes that she first had the idea to write about the emperor while visiting Hadrian's villa when she was 21. Here's a photo of her at the ruins at that time. Having been trained in Greek and Latin by private tutors, Yourcenar felt at home in the classical world, and all the more drawn to it by this sentence she found in Flaubert's correspondence. He wrote, "Just when the gods had ceased to be, and the Christ had not yet come, there was a unique moment in history between Cicero and Marcus Aurelius, when man stood alone." Ultimately, Yourcenar would, in her words, quote, do from within the same work of reconstruction which the 19th century archaeologists had done from without. That quote comes from her Reflections essay that was added to later editions of Memoirs of Hadrian, and which remains a great source for the backstory of the book's creation. Let me get the next slide here. For the winter 1989 Soamesville Library newsletter, I provided a short review of Memoirs of Hadrian. Here's part of my appraisal. Memoirs of Hadrian is one of those works we call a wisdom book, in which one finds a thought on nearly every page worthy of being inscribed in stone. A courthouse, for instance, might bear these words somewhere on its premises, quote, "Laws change more slowly than custom, and though dangerous when they fall behind the times, are more dangerous still when they presume to anticipate custom." Some of Yourcenar's most profound reflections are devoted to the passions, as in this rumination about the game of love, quote, "Of all of our games, love's play is the only one which threatens to unsettle the soul, and is also the only one in which the player has to abandon himself to the body's ecstasy." This is just an illustration of all the many editions of memoirs of Hadrian there are in many, many different languages. The book's acclaim led to many honors, including this bronze medal with the profile of Marguerite Yourcenar cast by the Paris Mint, La Monnaie de Paris, in 1977 from an engraving of the French sculptor Madeleine Pierre Quérol. The head side of the medal features a portrait of Yourcenar in her 50s, with her signature and that of the engraver along the sides. The tail side of the model offers a kind of a yin-yang pattern with quotes of the Roman Emperor Hadrian in Greek and Latin. The bronze medal was cast to celebrate memoirs of Hadrian. Yourcenar is also memorialized through a statue at Hadrian's villa in Tivoli, seen here in a photograph by Carol Rodato. The villa is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. As an aside, it's curious to note that Hadrian's villa produces around 1,500 liters of olive oil yearly, made from olives harvested from the 3,000 olive trees in the village gardens. Because of their age and the way they have become part of the landscape, the olive trees of Hadrian Villa can be thought of as a green monument, wrote David Graneri, president of the local chapter of Coldiretti, Italy's Farmers Association. In this photo, if you can see it down at the bottom there, 2 bottles of Olea Hadriani have been placed by a statue representing the Tiber River in the villa's canopus, named for an island in the Nile that was the sanctuary of Serapis, the underworld god. It's interesting to note that Hadrian was born in Italica, Spain, to olive oil barons before being adopted by his father's cousin, Emperor Trajan. It was largely thanks to memoirs of Hadrian that Yourcenar eventually was inducted into the Académie Française, the first woman to gain entrance since its founding by Cardinal Richelieu in 1635. In a column titled "The Lady from Maine" in the Christian Science Monitor, Yourcenar's friend and fellow islander August Hutcher reported on her installation, highlighting her transformation from a, quote, recluse as the inhabitant of a northern isle, as a searcher after mysteries, as the faithful guardian of a long-stricken friend, into a world figure turning heads in Paris. This is a photo of, on the left, of Yourcenar entering the academy, and on the right, Yves Saint Laurent's design for her outfit. According to Heckscher, the white shawl she wore that evening subtly evoked the scarf she wears against the cold of Maine winter. I love that. Get to the next slide. It was Yourcenar and Hadrian live on in many artistic forms. For example, at least 2 operas are based on her life and her memoirs of the emperor. One of them, Hadrian, 2018, was written and composed by popular Canadian singer Rufus Wainwright. He wrote the following about his inspiration. "When I first read the fabulous memoirs of Hadrian by Marguerite Yourcenar, a novel which inspired at least 3 generations of gay men, I was instantly struck with the idea of transforming this historical subject into operatic form." The second opera, Une Île de Passion, produced last year, is based on Yourcenar's life and work. Eric Champagne, who wrote the score, offered these notes about the casting. He wrote, "I hear Marguerite as a mezzo. We have recordings of interviews with her, and she speaks in a lower, more subdued tone of voice. Grace is a soprano for a musical reason. It allows for a beautiful contrast between the two main characters and the possibility of duets. I don't know much about opera, but this sounds intriguing. I'd love to see it. And I should also mention that Annie Ernaux, the 2022 winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, won the Marguerite Yourcenar Prize in 2017. Established in 2015, the prize is awarded to an author for her body of work. It's another nice piece of Yourcenar's legacy. I wanted to end by mentioning a few resources related to Yourcenar and her writing. Yvonne Bernier's book about Petit Plaisance, featuring the photographs of Story Litchfield, is a wonderful introduction to the writer's home in Northeast Harbor. You can also make a virtual visit of the house on the Marguerite Yourcenar Conservation Fund website and sign up for a tour. The house is open by reservation June 15th to August 31st, Tuesdays through Saturday, with tours limited to 4 people. I guess it's not too late to apologize to some of Yourcenar's neighbors for guiding a motor coach to her house sometime in the 1990s on a tour I led for Friends of the Art Institute of Chicago. Oh, the looks I got that day. Since I wrote that piece on Yourcenar and Piranesi for Ciabaco, Joan Howard, former director of Petit Plaisance, published her remarkable biography of Yourcenar's partner and translator, Grace Frick. Originally titled Grace Frick, The Visage of Fidelity, We Met in Paris. Grace Frick and Her Life with Marguerite Yourcenar is full of new insights into the couple's shared life, with much of it devoted to their time on this island. The biography serves as a kind of counterpoint to the Savignon biography of Yourcenar, which cast Frick in a rather unflattering manner. The book includes some wonderful photos, including the one I showed of Frick and Yourcenar on horseback earlier. But I also love these 2 portraits of Frick and Yourcenar in Seal Harbor in 1949. Yourcenar was writing Memoirs of Hadrian at that time. Howard's book is rich in anecdotes. And I love this one of Yourcenar meeting the renowned French writer Colette at the Palais Royal in Paris on June 19th, 1951, just after the publication of Memoirs of Hadrian. As Howard tells it, we have only one fragment of conversation from that meeting, which Yourcenar herself reported to the Belgian Royal Academy in 1971. She said, I saw Colette only once, 20 years ago. Already sickly and reclining on her chaise longue, she bestowed on me the general's embrace of a modest lieutenant and paid me the most succinct of tributes. At least I hope I can label it a tribute.
Carl just froze for a second. Until he comes back, I'll chime in. So far, his presentation has been incredible, and I'm sure none of you are surprised to learn that Marguerite is, her biography is as fascinating as her writing style. When I read through Memoirs of Hadrian, I was certainly reminded of my undergraduate years as an English major and had to really flex my intellectual muscles again. And I was curious, while we're waiting for Carl to come back, hopefully his internet will kick back on. I was curious how many of those that are with us tonight at the meeting have read Memoirs all the way through. And I know a few of you already have in the past, but if any of you were able to finish the book prior to today. Yes, it looks like a good amount. Great. That's awesome. Oh, nice. I loved seeing his slide of all of the covers from around the world that you that he showed during his presentation. So I'll jump in with some of the research that I learned, and hopefully Carl will be able to join us again so that we can ask him some questions. One of the things that I found interesting was that as much as Grace Frick was translating Marguerite's work from French into English, Marguerite also translated other works into French. She translated some of Henry James's work, and also Virginia Woolf she translated into French. So they were both putting one foot into a language and I think that is like, what kind of conversations did they have over coffee? That's kind of what I was thinking about. So they lived in Northeast Harbor year round, which is not necessarily common for some of the authors that we have covered in the past. Actually, Ruth Moore lived here year round, and Eleanor Mayo. I think actually we have a good we have a good mix of people here. And so they lived in Northeast Harbor at Petite Plaisance. And one of the things that I learned in some of the articles I read was that the community of Northeast Harbor, as Carl somewhat intimated in his mention of sending a motor coach their way, protected their privacy. They took it very seriously, and their responsibility as community members to protect their privacy. Hi, Carl. I jumped in and just started rambling about her.
Thank you. I seem to have lost connection there briefly. I'm glad I managed to get back on.
Okay, I'm so glad. So you froze up and you were reading a quote to us about her.
Yeah. And okay, so I was I wanted to just mention some of the videos that are available online about her life, including this wonderful one called Rencontre avec Madame Yourcenar, which shows her walking by the mill pond in Somesville, and then also looking over Somme Sound at Fernal Point. And then this wonderful sequence where they show her actually typing at this wonderful old typewriter. This is a screen grab from the film, and I really recommend it. It's a lot of fun. I also want to recommend the Lesbian History Trail of Mount Desert Island, a website dedicated to famous lesbian cultural figures who spent time on the island. This is the homepage photo montage. You see Madame Yourcenar on the upper right side there in the corner. Other featured figures include LaRue Spiker, Ruth Moore, Eleanor Mayo, Edith Hamilton, and Natalie Barney. It's a wonderful website, has a map to show you where all of these figures lived. The site also features a number of wonderful photos of Yourcenar over the years. This is just a handful of the photos. I love the early one of her as a young girl, and then as I guess a teen or in her 20s, and then a number of these photos of her on the island in different places. I think this one, the one in the middle at the bottom, is at the Thuya Garden, or maybe it was at the Assaku Gardens, and then one of her in her office at Petite Plaisance. Matthew Gailey's interviews with Yourcenar in With Open Eyes are full of revelations, including many related to the creation of Memoirs of Hadrian. I drew heavily on this book in writing my piece for Jabako, and I can't recommend this enough. There's some terrific interviews with her about her life and work. Each time I look into Yourcenar's life and work, I find something that I'd like to look into with more depth. I had forgotten, for example, that she met Virginia Woolf at the time she translated the British writer's novel, The Waves. That translation, Les Vagues, came out originally in 1937. It would be interesting to look at Yourcenar's translation alongside Woolf's original. According to one historian, the, quote, young nomadic intellectual Yourcenar described Woolf as, quote, at once sparkling and timid. While Woolf's description of Yourcenar was more detailed, she said, Yourcenar wore some nice gold leaves on her black dress. It is a woman, I suppose, with a past. Lives half the year in Athens, red-lipped, strenuous, a working Frenchwoman. That's Virginia Woolf on Madame Yourcenar, way back when. And I wanted to mention that the two photos there show sort of what they look like back in around 1937. This is the young bohemian Yourcenar, and then this is the cover of Time magazine with the famous photograph of Woolf by Man Ray, who she'd met in London and who took her photo. I will never turn down an opportunity to highlight Poems of Sutton Island by Hortense Flexner, which Yourcenar translated into French. I collaborated with Linda Lewis at Port and Storm and printmaker Polly Cote to produce this small publication of the complete series. Yourcenar called Flexner La Grande Poétesse du Maine, and I agree. Yeah, I really strongly recommend her work. She was a wonderful poet. Spent a lot of time on Sutton Island. And one more book to recommend, Dreams and Destinies, published after Marguerite Yourcenar's death in 1987. I love it because it includes transcripts of some of the dreams that Yourcenar had while living on Mount Desert Island. And I want to end with a passage from Dreams and Destinies that I restyled as a found poem. It appeared in volume 8, the 2006-2007 edition of Chabacco. And to accompany it, this wonderful portrait of Yourcenar in her home in Northeast Harbor. Here is the found poem. When I think about my life, I behold again a few strolls beside the sea, a nude little girl in front of a mirror, some scattered gusts of pitiful music in a hotel corridor, a bed, a few trains whose speed crushed the countryside, Venice at dawn, Amsterdam beneath the rain, Constantinople at sunset, the lilacs of the Rue de la Varenne, someone dying, roaming the halls of a clinic in a fur-lined cloak, the red box of a theater, a young woman whose face turned all mauve because she was standing under a violet-colored lamp, the calcined hills of Greece, a field of daffodils in the countryside near Salzburg, a few dismal streets in the old northern towns where my sadness paced at set times before the shop fronts of corn chandlers or dealers in bootblacking, the Grand Basin at Versailles beneath the weighted sky of November, a camel stall filled with animals munching blood-red melon, a parting near a subway entrance, a hand holding an anemone, the sweet sound of the blood in beloved arteries, and these few dozen lightning flashes are what I call my memories. That's a found poem from Dreams and Destinies. So that's my remarks. Thank you. Sorry about the interruption.
Oh, thank you, Carl. That was wonderful. I so appreciate you joining us and offering those remarks. And I'm so glad you were able to come back after that technical pause.
You know, it's
okay.
sort of, it's living back up in the woods here where we are off of Echo Lake that sometimes the connections blink out, shall we say.
It's okay. I would like the group to feel welcome to ask questions
Sure.
at this time, or to just offer any remarks. Carl, while you were gone, I did mention that I was happy to see in my research that not only did Grace translate Marguerite, but she was also a translator, and I did not know which of Virginia Woolf's works she had translated, but I did see that, and also that she had translated Henry James into the French.
Which would lead you to believe that Yourcenar's grasp of the English language was quite strong early on. I mean, her translation of Woolf was 1937.
So to hand over the responsibility of translating to your partner of decades. I can't even imagine what an amazing literary relationship that must have been, in addition to everything else. And I found that really intriguing.
Well,
So
she was a brilliant translator, Grace Frick was, of Yourcenar's work. And I think that they worked very closely on all of the translations. And it was a really wonderful relationship. And obviously, I mean, the result, the translation of Memoirs of Hadrian is brilliant. I mean, and it was really the work of both of them, but Frick was the lead on that. Yeah.
were they released in the same year, English and French?
I don't think so. I think the English came out maybe 2-3 years later. I'm pretty sure that the French came out in 1951 and the English maybe in 53. Is my understanding.
Have you read it in the French?
I have not.
But you do read in French.
I do. I
Yes.
do.
I can only read a little bit, so I glanced at it, but I knew I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to get far enough in time. We only had 2 months.
If I have a couple of glasses of wine, I can speak pretty well too.
Oh, okay. If it's a French wine, I'm sure that adds.
Yeah, well, that helps.
That helps.
Yeah.
So to our great group here, please unmute yourself. Let's hear some comments from all of you. I got a reading of the room. We had a lot of people that have read the book in its entirety, although I'm sure some are here just to learn more about her and Memoirs of Hadrian. So who wants to start? We have some great talkers in this group. David, unmute yourself. We'd love to hear from you.
First, I have a quick question. You froze, at least on my screen, right before you were going to tell us what Colette said. What? About the Colette one-line quote or something.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, gosh, I really wanted to tell you that. Yeah, hold on a second here. Darn, that's where it happened, huh?
At least on my screen.
Yeah, I would love to tell you that. Hold on a second here. Yeah, so as Howard tells it, we have only one fragment of conversation from that meeting, which Yourcenar herself reported to the Belgian Royal Academy in 1971. I saw Colette only once, 20 years ago, already sickly and reclining on her chaise longue. She bestowed on me the general's embrace of a modest lieutenant, and I love that. Yeah. I mean, I am Yourcenar is looking at Colette as the general and she is the modest lieutenant. And she paid me the most succinct of tributes. At least I hope I can label it a tribute. Memoirs of Hadrian? Goddamn. That's what Colette told her. It had just come out and it was all the rage, but to have that kind of, and you could see why Yourcenar might think that that's a tribute. Yes, maybe,
Yeah.
You don't know what tone Colette said it in, but I love that. And the whole idea, these meetings that she had over her life with Virginia Woolf, with Colette, with all of these other, Jean Cocteau, she was close friends with Jean Cocteau. It's really wonderful. What a life. Anyway.
Would you remember, do you know what Henry James novel she translated?
I think they may have been some stories. Yeah, I think, but I don't know offhand, but that's easily found.
I can look. I read English pretty well, but I struggle with Henry James and I struggle with Virginia Woolf, particularly The Waves. So I cannot imagine how a French person could pull this off.
Yeah.
I sort of had one small, I read We Met in Paris, which it takes a long time to read because it's chock full of details, but it had this, if I'm remembering correctly, it had this really scene, I just imagined, that Grace Frick and Marguerite Yourcenar would be up in their bedroom at night, the bed strewn with pieces of paper as they went over Grace Frick's work that day on the translation. And that that just so appealed to me to think of the two of them there side by side going over, comparing notes, discussing back and forth. That
Yeah.
book by made me kind of a fan of Grace Frick too. It said that the French biographers don't do her justice because they thought she stole her from Paris. That
Yeah,
the-
and there are also French commentators who kind of look down their nose at America,
yeah,
you know, and
exactly.
the fact that she lived in Maine. I mean, you know, this provincial place and stuff. And you know, that's ridiculous. She got so much from living here. I mean, her sense of the environment, the sense of community. It was a place, you know, as so many artists and writers find, it's a great place to do work. You know, you're away. You don't have the distractions of the city and all of that stuff going on. And but getting back to that image of them on the, you know, with the paper strewn, I think it was a very intimate, you know, project. You know, and I think I don't know this for a fact, but as far as translation collaborations go, I mean, you're basically talking about a wife and a wife working together on a single book. I mean, it's got to be very rare, if not unique, to the world of translation. It's an amazing story.
And they remained friends throughout it. I noticed that too. It
Yeah.
didn't seem to impact their relationship.
Yeah.
I guess it's hard. I can't actually comment well on the book because there's so much in it that when I got done, I said, I got to go through this. It needs to be read very, very slowly, like you said, or Jenna said. There's at least one thing you want to write down in your notebook from each page. And
Exactly.
one great moment of wisdom, or one great moment of something said much better than anyone ever else said before that thought. I mean, the book was filled with that. And I think Margaret or Yourcenar could have run the Roman Empire if someone, you know, promoted her to do that. The wisdom in there and the geopolitics and I mean, she gets to control the narrative. So she made Hadrian's Wars all come out right, but the political decisions, I mean, I've never read anything quite so wise. I mean, I was just struck by the wisdom of it, and I can see why she got into the Académie Française. I don't know why Colette didn't, but other than something to do with Colette's life. But and also looked today, and it was kind of depressing. Since her time, there have only been 8 other women out of the 733 people that have been brought into the Académie Française.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
And I've only heard of one of them, Simone Weil, and Simone de Beauvoir did not get in. But what I thought about it as the Académie Française is responsible for the French language, I can see why they picked Marguerite Yourcenar. I can't read French well, but I sort of had the English translation on one side and French on the other. So I took some, you know, purple passages and looked at them. And the French is marvelous. I played a little bit of it there's a great audible recording of it read by a member of the Académie Française who does a really good job on it. And when you hear it read aloud, the French part, it's absolutely amazing. It's totally stunning. And I had read this book years ago and I just raced through it, so I didn't get anything out of it to the extent that I did, you know, this month here in the cold winter doing nothing but that. So thank you and there was so much in your presentation. I really appreciated it.
Something you said about, you know, her being, you know, she could have been emperor or whatever. I had this quote from the Mathieu Gailey book of interviews that I wanted to read, where she's talking about research for the book. And it's pretty funny. She goes, Americans will say, oh, yes, you're doing research. And the image they have is of the writer leaving home in the morning, briefcase in hand, and walking briskly to the library for a full day's work, right up to closing time. But that's not the way it is. Anyone who loves life loves not only the present, but also the past, for the simple reason that the past, as I can't remember which Greek poet once said, outweighs the present, especially the narrow individual present that each one of us knows. Thus, it is only natural for a person who truly loves life to read a great deal. I used to read Greek literature quite a bit, at times with sustained intensity over long periods, at other times sporadically on my travels, for which I always prepared myself by putting a small volume of some Greek philosopher or poet in my pocket before leaving home. After a while, I had reconstructed for myself Hadrian's cultural universe. I knew more or less what he read, what his points of reference were, and how, influenced by the philosophers he had read, he viewed various matters. I never sat down and said to myself, you're going to write a book about Hadrian, so you've got to find out what he thought. If you start out that way, I don't think you'll ever succeed. The writer must soak up the subject completely, as a plant soaks up water, until the ideas are ready to sprout.
Oh,
Isn't that
that's
beautiful?
great. Yeah, that's great. Well,
It's just
thanks
full
again.
of the book is just full of that kind of
Yeah.
those kind of and you know, when you talk about the fluency of the writing, if you listen to her just talk in any of those video interviews, the French that comes out of her mouth is so seamless. I mean, it's just like, oh my God, it's so clear, which I appreciate. But also just like it's composed. That's all I can say, you know.
So in France, at least in some of the articles that I was reading about her that were published in the 80s and the 90s, she is read in high school, and she's one of the more popular literary giants in France. And so she wrote about being on MDI and loving the people there. And it was kind of an intentional thing to, I think, remove herself a bit from that fame and renown that she may have had in Paris and France, because people, she wrote this really, really great, there's a Down East article about her, and she's quoted in here. She says, what she likes about some of the villagers is their independence of mind, their free spirits. They often, this is a quote of hers, they often tell you things that are extraordinary, she says. One learns much more from people who are supposed to have an ordinary mind and an ordinary life. As a matter of fact, nobody has an ordinary mind, nor an ordinary life, but they are not stereotyped by opinions they have learned at school or picked up from the media. And she goes on to talk about a lobsterman that she has learned a lot about. And when she sees the books in the window of the Northeast Harbor bookstore, as it's referred to, she thinks that those are being sold for the tourists, because she doesn't presume that the people on MDI are reading that kind of stuff. And that's just fine with her. Like she really loves her community. This is another quote. I always astonish people when I say I have known some saints here as I have elsewhere. She explains what she means by saints. Persons usually in modest circumstances who sacrifice their own comfort and even sometimes their own necessities in order to care for others. Pure kindness, she says, it is much more common than you think, but it takes a certain sensibility or a certain humility to recognize this quality in others. And I just find it beautiful with her incredibly well-traveled background, being born in Belgium, growing up in France, traveling all over the world. And she found this place on MDI to be the place that fed her spiritually after some really grim times during World War II. She was able to find a place to write memoirs of Hadrian after embedding herself in that mindset for, as I saw, like, you know, she was kind of working on that off and on for 10 to 20 years, just in the thinking of it. She found a place that she could kind of let it all come out into this work that was incredibly impressive. I was so humbled when I was reading it. And you were saying like every page could have it's one of those things where you feel like you're highlighting like almost everything. Like it gets laughable because at this point you're just highlighting the whole book. The only
Yeah.
thing I wasn't was a lot of the history. And I realized not history, but like the details, the political mentions of people's names and those types of things. And I would find myself just kind of glossing over it and realizing like he's just talking about all these great things he's done because I forgot that I was reading Marguerite Yourcenar. I literally thought I was reading Memoirs of Hadrian. Like there were many times that I forgot I was reading not Hadrian. And I believed everything she said. Like she could have told me this man did this, that, and the other thing, and I would have just believed her, which is, I guess, a testament to her skill. So I love that she had, as I mentioned with Grace, and her one foot in English and French, and then also this foot in this, the academy, and then a foot in MDI and her lobsterman friends and her community. She narrowly made it into the academy. She only got in by one vote. And she had a really great quote about how women are often put on a pedestal, but not often given a seat at the table. And I was just, of course,
Ooh.
you know,
Yeah.
bam, nailed it. So that is one of a lot of the things that I found her incredibly astute in her thinking. So
Yeah,
thanks.
apparently there were several of the old boys that didn't like her being honored that way. And she had to renew her French citizenship, I believe. That was
One of the
part of the
Academy
deal.
members was quoted as saying, it's highlighted somewhere in my notes, but it might take me too long to find it. He said, there hasn't been a woman in the Academy in over 300 years, and there doesn't need to be a woman in the Academy for another 300 years. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, thank you, David, for starting us off with that question. Anybody else who'd like to jump in? Oh, Carolyn had a question in the chat about whether Marguerite Yourcenar, spent time with any of the other incredible writers that were on MDI. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's yes. Carl, do you
That's a good
know?
question. That's a really good question. I mean, she would have overlapped with, say, Ruth Moore, but I have no idea whether they ever met. I mean, it's interesting that LaRue Spiker took there's a wonderful photo of Yourcenar and Hortense Flexner in the backyard of Petit Plaisance, and LaRue Spiker took that photo. So they must have met at least at that time. I don't know. I mean, she knew Richard Estes quite well, and Richard ended up painting her portrait for the Academy. So, but I don't know. I don't know, and I'm sure it's in that. It's probably in that Grace Frick book, the Joan Howard's biography.
She did Hortense Flexner, besides her, I think in that film you mentioned of her when she's on MDI, different spots on MDI.
Yeah.
I believe I read somewhere that there are some of Flexner's poems in that movie or film. They may have been read or referred to.
Yeah, and the title is actually the title of one of Flexner's poems, L'Île Heureuse, Happy Island. That's one of the poems from Sutton Island.
So did they simply have a professional knowledge of each other, or were they friends?
And that's another good, they were friends for sure. And somehow Yourcenar discovered her work and fell in love with it enough to really publish this very substantial. The book is not simply the poems from Sutton Island. It's a wide range of Flexner's poems. She was quite a well-known poet in her day. I happen to just gravitate towards the Sutton Island ones because it's in our backyard, and there's such wonderful evocations of life on an island, of closing the house in the fall, and the sense of Native Americans in the woods, and they're really, and I think Yourcenar just, was really taken with it. But I think that they clearly knew each other, through the translation project, and Yourcenar really loved her work.
Any other questions? I have more I can talk about, but I don't want to just monopolize the mic, as they say.
I'm curious as to what people thought of Memoirs of Hadrian just as a book, because it's not easy. It's deep and thick, and yeah.
Judith, the last book we read was Love and Idleness. Have you read Love and Idleness by Frances Marion Crawford?
No.
It's essentially like a romantic comedy of a book. Nice, like breezy, 112 pages, lots of laughs. And then we went to this one, and Judith said, boy, that's going to be quite a trip. And she was right. But yeah, I agree. I would love to hear about Judith. Did you? Difficile, yes, Maureen.
Très difficile.
Judith, did you reread it for this?
Well, I started it, and I got into it, and I loved it, but then life took over. There were just things that happened, and then I've enjoyed this conversation, and I know I will go back to finishing it. And but it is a very difficult book to digest and to read, and there are beautiful moments, and then
Joanne.
So I had to really push to get it read. I had other things going on, and so I felt like I had to read it way too fast. And so I didn't begin to absorb it all. But I sort of had the sense, and Carl, maybe you can, as you know the book much better, may be able to tell me if this is true. But I had the sense that she portrays Hadrian as portraying himself to Marcus Aurelius that he changed as he went along in the book. Like he started out emphasizing all the things that were very ascetic, and all the things that he didn't do, and how good a person he was in various ways. And then as you get farther and farther in, and particularly his love affair, and then his lover's suicide, he starts like letting out all of the dirt, in a sense, a lot of the parts of himself that weren't necessarily quite as admirable as what he seemed to be portraying in the beginning. And I don't know, maybe, as I say, I had to read it fast, but is there supposed to be a sort of development in how he's presenting himself to his adopted son or nephew?
I think you're right on. Yeah, I think that's very much part of the novel. That development of his persona from early on to the tragedy, and later on, and his own death. And yeah, very much so.
Okay. Yeah, I thought he didn't come off very well when he talked about, the lead into the suicide and all the way he was treating him. He suddenly went from being so totally admirable in his public life.
It's a very complicated figure.
Yeah.
And it just always amazes me that this writer would manage to put herself in his shoes and for his body and become him.
I read some. Oh, I'm sorry, Judith.
I was just going to say, I didn't mean to convey last time that I had read the book, but I knew about it because my husband was Belgian, and read French and very well, and that was his mother tongue. And so of course he read it in French, and we had discussions about it. And it sounded, I was totally, undone by the whole thing because it was so amazing. And so I always wanted to read it. But I knew it was a very difficult book. And I think his getting into, or her getting into his life and understanding his life in the way that she did seems to have been pretty amazing.
I wonder if there's a really good audio version of it. That's what I might turn to, because it reminds me of I always wanted to read Don Quixote by Cervantes, and and Jenna, I think you were mentioning, there are just these sections in Memoirs of Hadrian where there are names and political things and stuff like that. And the beauty of the audio version that I listened to of Don Quixote was that the guy that was reading it just knew all of those Spanish names, and they just kind of, flowed off his tongue, and they just went by, just beautifully. I mean, and then you get back to the action of Sancho Panza and what he was doing, and I'm wondering, I bet you there's a good audio version of the book. It would be good to find that. That might help. That's what I'm saying in dealing with what is sometimes slow going.
Certainly, when Joanne was saying it's something you can read and, if you can take a while with it and read a little and digest and stuff, like, versus thinking like I have to finish it before the book club, that might help a little bit. Carolyn, you have your hand icon up.
Well, I knew nothing about the author before this, and I didn't have a chance to sort of Google her. So I just launched in. And at first I thought, why is she writing about this? Couldn't she write about something more interesting? But I went to a very unusual public high school many, many, many years ago. And it was immersed in the classics. We studied Latin when all the other high schools were giving it up, and Greek, and we read original works. And instead of American history, we studied Greek and Roman history. And so, and all of the extracurricular activities, we built funeral pyres and had chariot races.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, but anyway, but then, I left that behind. But reading this book, I began to really get into it. And I said, oh, yeah. Oh, that person. Oh, yeah. Oh, that history. Oh, that's right. And also, I'm of Armenian heritage, and Armenian history of that era is very complicated. So every time Armenia was mentioned, I said, oh, okay, that's what was going on in this story. I mean, I knew it was, the author's version of it, but I thought it was very compelling because it just seemed very real. And I also became really engaged in it as his personality evolved. That was really seemed intentional. The way that the author wrote it, and that was really interesting. So thank you for picking it out.
Yeah, when you were asking about whether she knew other writers on the island, one of the great writers about you're talking about the history of Greece, and was Edith Hamilton, who summered on Seawall. And I would love to know if they knew each other. That would be an incredible conversation, because Hamilton had an incredible knowledge of Roman and Greek history. And I can't imagine the two of them, sitting down. I think they overlapped. I'm pretty sure Hamilton was here. Well, maybe a little earlier, but anyway.
They did know each other. That's in We Met in
it?
Paris. It's
Okay.
got Edith Hamilton coming with her partner for the weekend to stay with them. I think even.
Oh, wow.
I think Edith Hamilton appears several times in that book visiting them.
Okay. Thanks, David.
So one of the reasons that I selected Memoirs of Hadrian was because a couple of book club members suggested it, and also there are only so many options that are available in an English translation of her many works. But I did see reference to one that is not translated into English, but I thought it was kind of interesting. She wrote, I'm just going to read from this Down East article I was referencing earlier. So she wrote the first 2 volumes of her own memoirs at Petit Plaisance in Northeast Harbor. And they're called Souvenir Pieux and Archives du Nord, N-O-R-D, Nord. They're really descriptions of life and society in 19th century France and in the Low Countries. Like, leave it to her for her memoirs to actually be a history of, you know, Belgium and France, and not just herself. But it does say, in a sort of flash forward in these memoirs, she's written a little bit about her life in Maine. And recently, she has made Mount Desert Island the setting for part of a novella called Un Homme Obscur. Have you heard of that one,
Oh,
Carl?
it's wonderful, because it's, of all of her writings, it's really aside from the Dreams and Destinies that I mentioned that have the dreams of being on the island, but it's the only work of fiction that she wrote where part of it takes place on Mount Desert Island. It's I think the character's name is Nathaniel, and he goes off on a ship from Amsterdam and ends up on the island, and it's at the time when the Jesuit colony is here on Fernal Point, which was sort of something that Yourcenar really gravitated towards, that piece of history. The French Jesuits, and then they were slaughtered, I believe, by the British. Anyway, that the obscure man, L'Homme Obscur, is about that. Is part of it's about that, and so she describes the island a little bit, but again, as if she was there whenever it was in this mid 18th century. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, I meant to recommend that. It's in a book. I think there are 3 novellas kind of in the collection, and that's one of them.
And it's
I'm glad.
still it hasn't
Yeah.
been translated into the English yet?
It has been translated. Yeah, there is a
Oh,
translation.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
So The Obscure Man, everyone.
Yeah,
And
I have it over there somewhere, but
wonderful. So yeah, I just saw a short reference to it as being about a Dutch sailor who
yeah,
visits.
that's right, a Dutch sailor.
From
Yeah.
from Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And it was also referenced for when you were talking about how she embedded herself in kind of the life of and thinking of Hadrian.
Mm.
She mentions the same thing was possible for that story because of her life on MDI. She was able to imagine a shipwreck,
Right.
remote island situation, what the winter was like then, because she lived here and she put herself in that. So 2 completely different things, Roman emperor and Dutch shipwreck, and yet she was able to kind of wrestle both of those.
Yeah, I think she almost wrote that Obscure Man in order to be able to write about the Jesuit colony. I swear. I mean, I think that was sort of her goal. She wanted to recreate that incident and that piece of history, island history, which meant the most to her in some ways of anything from our island history.
Do you know why she's buried in Soamesville as opposed to?
Yes, she and Grace, first lived in a little cabin there, right on Brookside Road, leading into the cemetery. And they had some wonderful years there before they moved to Northeast Harbor. And, they loved the stream going by. I mean, it's one of the most peaceful places in the world.
It's like there or Gott's Island, I think, having learned about what a beautiful spot that is to rest.
Yeah.
Like,
So I think they decided that, when the time came, they would be buried there. Pretty sure that's the reason. That was their first residence.
are there any other authors that are there any other names in that cemetery that you found that have led to essays and articles and?
No, but the three of them, she and Jerry Wilson and Grace Frick are all buried in that cemetery. Yeah, that another thing that I'd love to look into at some point is Jerry Wilson and he was a very interesting individual, very close to Madame Yourcenar after Grace Frick died, and they did a number of projects together. There's another film related to the blues, to Black spirituals and the blues, that Jerry Wilson did with Madame Yourcenar. Madame Yourcenar actually translated some of the spirituals into French and was very interested in civil rights. She also protested the Vietnam War in Bar Harbor. I love to think of her. She mentioned, having a sandwich board and walking on the sidewalks of Bar Harbor to protest the Vietnam War.
She also she translated a play by James Baldwin.
That's right.
I
That's
mean,
right.
it's just
Let's just put it out there.
like,
Yeah.
here we go.
Whew.
Do you know anybody in the group who Walter Kaiser is? Does that name, I presume, Northeast Harbor resident or Soamesville? I wasn't able to look too much. I wasn't able to look into his name more before today, but I thought I'd ask that question first, because in the MDI Historical Society's collection, we have his typewritten notes that he gave at her memorial service.
Yeah, I was going to say, he spoke at her memorial service. It's a beautiful
Yes,
tribute.
yes. And so there are a couple of parts from that, those notes that I wanted to share with all of you. As we prepared her ashes according to her instructions, wrapping them first in a white scarf, placing them in an Indian basket of sweetgrass, covering them with a scarf bearing the Buddhist symbol of flying cranes, and then enveloping the basket with the white silk shawl she had worn the day she was made a member of the Académie Française.
Wow.
Her dog scampered about, playing silently in the powdery snow, performing, it seemed, a dance of celebration. Then, sensing that something serious was about to occur, he abruptly stopped and came to stand quietly beside the small grave into which we lowered the basket and strewed rose petals.
God.
I know.
Yeah. I think Kaiser was her translator later on, perhaps after Grace Frick died. I
Right,
believe.
because she passed away almost 10 years at least before.
Yeah, so I think he translated a couple of one or two of her books. I can't swear to that, but I think that's the connection, and they were friends, obviously.
Pardon my flipping of pages if you can hear those. His remarks on her are just incredible. She measured the transience of empires, the evanescence of love, and the perishability of earth itself. Pessimistic about mankind's future, given his ceaseless destruction of his environment and his failure to learn the lessons of the past, she cast a mournful eye upon what she called the human document, the drama of man in his struggle with the forces that have made him and that bit by bit will destroy him. I know, she's just, everything she says is kind of amazing. Here's one last one. Oh, and it brings it back to Hadrian, I guess. In this world, of Mount Desert, which she felt so intimately close to and where she made her home. Her spirit will, I feel, forever range across its mountains and upon its shores, bestowing the benediction of her wisdom and affection upon this land. And as we say goodbye to her today, I would utter for her the ancient Roman valediction that Hadrian himself would have known. Sit tibi terra levis Margarita. May the earth, this earth that you love so dearly and so deeply, may the earth lie light upon you, which is beautiful. So those typewritten notes are in the collection at MDI Historical, but I did just want to tell you about a few other cool things that are in other collections around the island. Northeast Harbor Library has some paintings done of her, portraits done of her, and I have the names of the artists that have done them, but I failed to bring those with me today. I'll include them in the notes that I follow up with. As you know, I send out my research notes after each one of these meetings, so I'll include that. We also have the LaRue Spiker photo of Marguerite Yourcenar and Hortense Flexner in our collection.
Wonderful.
And we have LaRue Spiker's copy of the Petit Plaisance book that was in her own library. So she obviously went to visit and kept the brochure or booklet that she got when she was there. Northeast Harbor also has an oral history that they conducted with her. I have sent an email to see if we can work on getting the audio tuned up, because you need to, it's like the whispering effect of it. So I didn't share it because as it stands right now, it's a little hard to access, but they do have that. They have some books that are signed by her that she donated to them at Northeast Harbor Library, and also one of the translations of Negro spirituals that she did, a French translation for, published in the French journal Mercure de France in 1952.
Wow.
There's also a lot of interesting links that I'll include in the research notes. And then, as Carl mentioned, Petit Plaisance is open in the summers for visits by appointment. I think they may have some open hours, but all of that is available on their website. And it's exactly as it was when she was living there. Now, Carl, this is pretty fun because when we did Ruth Moore's book, we had Christina Gillis, I believe her last name is, who owns Ruth Moore's home on God's Island.
Yeah, Tina Gillis. Yeah,
Tina Gillis.
Yeah,
Yep.
she's wonderful.
And then we had Muriel Davison with us when we were doing Eleanor Mayo, and she was calling in from Eleanor Mayo and Ruth Moore's home.
Oh, wow.
And so it's been kind of wonderful that these spaces are still in our lives. This one we can actually go visit without being invited over. So I do encourage people to go check that out in Northeast Harbor sometime this summer.
Yeah,
So,
the Marguerite Yourcenar Conservation Fund is the website, and that has all the tour information and how to call. I mean, email and find a time. And I mentioned that the tours are limited to 4 people. I think it was closed during COVID for at least maybe 2 summers, more or less.
yeah.
But it's now getting a little more open. So. Yeah, I really recommend it. It's quite a place. You're not allowed to go to all parts of the house, but the kitchen, she hated the idea of having a refrigerator out in the open. So she had a closet. It was in a closet. You had to open the closet to get to the refrigerator. And, and there's her typewriter. And for me, all of the Piranesi prints, which ended up inspiring my Chabacco piece. It's just a treat. She was, it's sort of like she was surrounding herself with Hadrian's life and ruins, and yeah, it's quite a place.
Those pieces depicted, they were based on Hadrian. You were mentioning the ruins. So when you wrote in Chabacco, in case somebody hasn't read that article, you picked up on this note somewhere about them having these prints, right? You just saw that
Yeah.
almost in other research or something, and we're like, whoa, wait, what?
Yeah,
So
they bought them early on together somewhere like in New York in a print shop or something. And then I think they bought a couple more over the years. And I mean, it was the perfect art for Madame Yourcenar. I mean, you know, I mean, they're not all of Hadrian's Villa, but a number of them are. And you could see, you know, she could just sit there and dream and transport herself to this world. Yeah, that the brain of Piranesi, her essay on Piranesi is just fabulous. She gets him so well. Yeah.
and her library, if you look at the pictures, oh, I'm sorry, Judith, you keep raising your hand. Her library is like full of the titles, you know, she has like all of the mighty tomes,
Yeah.
the many, many mighty tomes. Judith.
I was just going to ask, if you, the tribute to Marguerite Yourcenar by Kaiser, do you is that something that is available somewhere, or is that
Yes, so we have the original,
out, or do you have that?
yep, we have the original notes in our collection, but we've digitized it, so it's as a PDF. So in my research notes, the link will bring you right to the full text, and it's 9 pages long, typewritten.
Oh, nice.
Only one mistake. I was really like, he only had to cross out one. He put her instead of
Wow.
he, and I was like, oh, this is so good. You're like, accuracy is 99.9%. So yes, and also there's some, like, she photographed so well. Her,
Yeah.
like, something about her whole demeanor, the weight of her intellect is like present in those photos, and also her kindness in her eyes. I shared the link to Parlez-vous Français, that blog, and read that wonderful recalling of meeting her. And it did really make her seem just so welcoming. And I have been in that same scenario where you are the, you know, the one with the questions in the presence of greatness, and to have that magnanimous generosity extended to you is no small thing. And I loved that we were gifted with that little glimpse as well. Carl, are you writing any articles now?
I am always writing articles. Yeah.
What's on your
Well, right now I'm writing a piece about a wonderful Native American artist named James Eric Francis. I went up and visited him on Indian Island last week. He's the historian, and he's the cultural historian for the Penobscot tribe, but also is a wonderful artist. The Abbey has one of his pieces I'm trying to get for the article. The Hudson Museum has some of his work. He's quite an individual. He does paintings, videography, photography, stop action, all from this little tiny studio on Indian Island. And yeah, I'm really, I just love that's one of the perks of what I do, is being able to go to these places and meet these people in there where they do their stuff. And this one was particularly wonderful. I also got to see the Penobscot River completely frozen over, which I don't think I'd ever seen before, with a great crust of snow. And you know, Indian Island, it's just right smack in the middle of the river, which I knew, but I just had never been over the bridge and realized where it was. And yeah, so that's one piece I'm working on. Yeah. And I have a piece coming out, which would interest Islanders here, on Judy Taylor, coming out in Maine Boats, Homes, and Harbors, a wonderful artist from Tremont. And there again, it was, you know, just really fun to spend some time in her studio. And it was fun because she was just finishing, she's been commissioned. This is her third commission for a portrait of a scientist doctor at Johns Hopkins University. They have a very well-known collection of portraits of well-known people. And in fact, in the early years, John Singer Sargent and other people did these portraits, but Judy's done 3 of them now. And the third one was on her easel when I visited her, just sort of in the beginning stages, just sort of starting to be sketched in. And it's really kind of cool to think of this artist and on this island, doing this pretty major work. And I also have to recommend the mural that she did in Ellsworth. If you haven't gone by there yet, it's really kind of wonderful. It's on Water Street, just near the Emmaus House, just on that corner there. I can't remember. It's Coastal Interiors building, and one wall of it that backs on the parking lot there has been completely transformed into this wonderful, lively Ellsworth mural that she did in the fall. So if you get a chance, check that out.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you are no stranger to MDI literature. And our group so far has covered, gosh, who was our first? Oh, we did Mary Roberts Reinhardt, the murder mystery writer, the crime writer.
Yep.
We read The Wall by her. I think we all loved that one a little bit. I was a big
I'm
fan.
gonna write that down.
I was a big fan of that one. And then we had Eleanor Mayo, and we read Swan's Harbor.
Mhm.
I'm doing an impromptu reflective on our on our book club in the last year. And we did Ruth Moore, and which one did we do by Ruth Moore? I've just read another of hers, so now I'm spacing out on which one we did.
Winds. It was Speak to the Winds.
Speak to the Winds. Thank you. I couldn't get the word spoon handle out of my head once I thought it, and then I was game over. Speak to the Winds. And then the last one was F. Marion Crawford, Love and Idleness.
Yeah, I don't know that one at all.
So Francis Marion Crawford only visited MDI. He would stay at Reef Point with the Joneses, and he wrote Bar Harbor, which was a travel guide, essentially. Very interesting, and it has period, like specific photographs from that time included in it, and incredible. Judith did some awesome follow-up research on the on the photographers from Love and Idleness. So one thing that's really cool about this group is that we follow up with some of the research questions that we have as we get together. And I included him because I noticed that there was a lot of female women MDI writers, and I was looking to include a male, and I still am having a hard time finding more. Of all the people that I just tossed your way for names, is there anybody that we're missing? Do you have any recommendations for our group?
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through my things here. Where is that? No, I can look for you.
Awesome.
I did when David, my brother, and I did Art of Acadia, we had a chapter called Figures of Island Literature. And because the book was so damn long, they took it out. They took that piece out. And I've been working on it, and Dave and I are working on it for publication in a future Tobacco. Actually, I've been in touch with Rainey about it because we spent a lot of time on it. And it goes through the very early years, and then some of the tourist writing, the Clara Barnes Martin, who did these wonderful evocations of the island for, to attract people to come to the island, right up to, Roxana Robinson, Frankie's Place, some of the contemporary people who write about the island. I can go through that, and I think that the Frankie's Place is kind of fun.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have, and that's
something different.
Roxana.
No, that's Oh, he's the husband of Frances Fitzgerald. I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember his name, but it's a lot of fun.
Great.
It's really about, yeah.
Thanks, Joanne. Good to see you. She just had to head out.
Yeah.
So I do have, like, Maureen mentioned Rachel Field. Yes, I have Rachel Field on my list. Also Eleanor Wiley. I wanted,
Oh, God. Yeah, I would definitely come back for that.
yeah.
Yeah, I wrote about her for Chabacco a couple of years ago, and
So I do have a good list of, I have at least a half a dozen names, and they're all women, which
Yeah.
I have absolutely no problem with, but I am
Yeah.
I am soliciting any male names that happen to pop up.
Yeah.
And
I think if you do Rachel Field, you might consider inviting that Robin Clifford Wood, who wrote the very interesting biography of Field that came out 2 years ago, or a year ago, 2 years ago. Because it's a very interesting, it had never been done before. And Field was a pretty major writer in her day. I mean, I love her for her main, from her, the old gods come to so-and-so Maine, and what's the wonderful one about
God's Pocket.
God's Pocket. Yeah, that I think is just a brilliant book. But
great title, like
she would, yeah.
title award.
Oh, it
And
ties
you know
into,
what, you know where it comes from. She's in a field, this 18-year-old girl's in a field, and she's on this strange place, and this old man is coming towards her, and she's very afraid of him because she doesn't know, what it means or what he's up to. And he goes to her and he said, "Don't worry, dear, you're as safe with me as if you were in God's pocket."
Oh.
yeah, and I think
was-
that's a member of the Hadlock family on Great
Yes,
Cranberry,
it is.
who gives her the journals of his, maybe it was his grandfather, who was this famous character, really a character, who was always up to something. Well, I guess today we'd call it entrepreneurial, but back then it was a little kind of a mixed bag. He took two Inuits to Europe to demonstrate their skills.
Samuel Hadlock, I just
Yeah,
saw.
Samuel Hadlock. Yeah, which was not a good idea. The wife died, I think, of disease. It was very exploitive. I mean, he charged money for people, but it's incredible to think of him touring Europe with these two people, and they're spearfishing. They're showing their spearfishing like in the fountains at Versailles. I mean, that kind of a thing. But while he's over there, he meets the Prussian woman who becomes his wife. She's known as the Prussian woman. They come back to Great Cranberry. One of the most beautiful moments in the book, in God's Pocket, is she had to fill in some of the facts, some of the narrative around what she had in the journals. So she had to make up things. And so there's this moment where she's recreating his return to the island and the route he took, which is not maybe the route that he took, and there's just this beautiful vision of MDI coming up on the horizon. And but then his last thing, and actually the pocket comes in again at the very end. Spoiler alert. He decides to when he was in Europe, he realized that many of the natural history museums didn't have seals in their collection. So he had this idea: I'm going to go up to Greenland or wherever and kill these seals and stuff them and sell them to European natural history museums. And while he was up there, and he was up there with 25 young Cranberry Island men who were on the boat. They all died, and he died out on the ice because it was in the winter. I mean, it was a really like a crazy thing, and it's probably one of the great disasters, one of the great tragedies of the Cranberry Isles. I mean, you lost, this cohort of men, just because of this sort of crazy idea. And the last part, the last little almost coda of the book is that the Prussian woman was so upset with what he had done. She was so angry at her husband. She took the seals, which were all crated up. He had already crated up some of the seals. She took them and threw them out into the ocean. And one of them floated down the coast, and someone picked it up, and it's in some natural history museum somewhere in southern New England. It's the very end of the book, and you're like, what? It's an amazing book. I would really recommend that book. Now that I think of it, I mean, it's troubling because of what he did with these Native Americans, but it's quite a tale. It is really quite a tale. And it's beautifully written. Yeah.
So there's two things that popped up associative in my head when
Okay.
you were talking about that. One is in the next edition of Tobacco, which is coming out in May. If you happen to not know, it's the journal that the MDI Historical Society puts out every year. If you're a member, then you get one in the mail. We also sell them on our website. But this year is the Maritime edition, and one of the articles is written by Julia Gray, and she writes about the history of coasting, kind of on the history of sailing on the Cranberry Isles,
Oh,
the
wow.
age of sail on the Cranberry Isles. And she goes into the Hadlock family as well. And one thing that's interesting is she talks about these enterprising Hadlocks with a fleet of like 14 schooners. And then you turn to the next article, which is about Thomas Jefferson's embargo, and you learn that those 14 schooners were doing some smuggling. So it all kind of connects.
Wow.
And that if anybody's interested in some of the history as well behind the Hadlock family, that is going to be in the next Tobacco. And then you mentioned seals.
Mm.
Fun fact, a Marguerite Yourcenar fun fact.
Ah,
So
Don't
you mentioned her political, she protested against the Vietnam
oh,
War,
yes,
for example,
yes, yes.
right? And it says, Yourcenar was actively involved in a number of social issues. A lifelong vegetarian and a Buddhist by philosophical inclination, she was a passionate defender of animal rights and environmental conservation. It was her letter to Le Monde which alerted French readers to the massacre of baby seals in Newfoundland,
Wow.
beginning a movement in Europe to boycott the importing of seal fur.
Ah, way to go.
See? So
Yeah.
she cared about the seals.
Yeah. Unlike
Yeah,
Samuel Hadlock.
but not like she would not have been a fan of
Yeah.
Hadlock's enterprises for sure.
Yeah.
So God's Pocket is definitely going to be on our upcoming list.
Yeah,
And
another poet who only is a little bit connected to the island is Abby Houston Evans. She's one of my favorite poets, and she was friends with Rachel Field, and she wrote a poem called Northern Lights over Sutton that I think is one of the most beautiful poems of the area. And my Uncle Bill, the painter William Kingbush, turned me on to her a long time ago. And she was actually Edna St. Vincent Millay's Sunday school teacher in Camden way back when. And Millay wrote the introduction to Evans's first book. She only published 3 very thin collections of poetry, each one just exquisite. Beautiful work about Maine, the coast of Maine. She loved geology, so there are a number of poems about rocks that are just stunning. You wouldn't think that they would be stunning, but they're wonderful. I would recommend her, although she didn't have that strong a connection to MDI, but I like Hortense Flexner, I never miss an opportunity to mention her because she's a favorite, longtime favorite.
So speaking of Flexner, you mentioned that you had partnered up with a couple of other individuals and put
Yeah,
out the
Linda.
Sutton Island.
Yeah,
Are there copies of that still available?
I think you can find them online, but it was a very small edition. So, yeah,
Okay.
you'd have to look around. Yeah, that was with Linda Lewis in the old Port in a Storm. I lived basically up the hill from her and convinced her that this was a good idea to publish a little collection. And then Polly Cote, I don't know if any of you knew her. She was a wonderful artist. She and her husband Mel lived in a geodesic dome down. I think it's what is that called? It's the road. It goes out to the sort of one side of Soames Harbor there. Mel was I worked with Mel at College of the Atlantic, and Polly was the head of there was sort of a chapter of the Union of Maine Visual Artists on the island. So she put on shows at the college and was just a terrific artist and printmaker. So I asked her to do some illustrations for the book, and it really turned out real nicely. It was just very simple, but I really dug into Flexner at that point. Discovered she came from an incredible family, intellectual.
Her husband is also.
Yes, and Wincy King, who is
Yeah, I have to look
formidable.
into him some more.
Yeah,
He was a cartoonist.
Yeah, cartoonist, and yeah, it's a good story.
So Maureen asked in the chat, could you repeat the name of the poet? Was it Abby
Houston Evans.
Abby
Houston being
Evans.
Houston being Huston. Abby Houston Evans, and her collected is available. You should be able to find that online pretty easily. The University of Pittsburgh Press published her collected, and again, it's not that big a book, but it has some additional work from later on that are, yeah.
What was the poem that you mentioned that she had written?
Northern Lights over Sutton.
Northern Lights over Sutton.
Yeah. Oh, it's a killer.
Well, any other? Oh,
reading ahead.
I'm sorry. What was that?
But I have several years of reading ahead.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Yep. So many books, so little time.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
I know. It's pretty. I guess it's a good problem to have, right?
It is. It is.
Place to be to have that kind of problem.
Yeah, and it's just I was worried at the beginning that I wouldn't be able to find enough authors to make this club extend beyond 2 or 3 meetings or something like that. Our temper is not a problem at all so far. It's just been very easy. And then once choosing a book, the history behind these people is just so fascinating. And
It is.
Kathy Pratt, who's a member as well, but wasn't able to join us, wrote "Small World, Our Island." And I really liked that thinking, because we all, the whole world is a small world, but it sure seems like it all kind of condenses down into the MDI region once you get into all the different histories that overlap there. So
I see Carolyn posted that it's Jim Sturva is the author. It's racking my brains to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. It's good to see you. I have seen, and Juanita as well. I've seen you in your space. Nice to see you. We will be meeting again in April. We meet every 2 months to give ourselves a little bit of a chance to choose a book and also give us some time to read it and for me to do research on these folks. Carl, we will certainly invite you back for Eleanor Wiley.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
One of my favorite stories.
And anytime you come across anybody that you think our group would love, please
I will
send us send us a note because
Yeah.
we we're very much enjoying this. At least I am. I'm speaking for all of us, but really, I'm really much enjoying this. It's just been a whole new way of experiencing the community. So
Yeah, terrific. Thank you for inviting me.
yeah,
fun.
any final thoughts from, oh, hey, did you hear me earlier? Did you see me earlier? Like when you were reading Marguerite's quote about history and how in the past, and I was like cheerleading over here. It's just unbelievable. She's so, I will certainly be revisiting that quote and sharing it with some of my close colleagues in the field. So
Good, good. All right, enjoy.
thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Have a
Carl.
good night. Take
So long.
care.